The oldest room in the Galactic Archive had no windows. Archivist Vera always found that strange. Every other chamber in the archive opened toward the stars. The council wanted visitors to feel small when they entered. It wanted them to remember that history was larger than one planet, one species, or one lifetime. But this room was buried under 12 layers of black stone. No stars, no glass, no sound, only shelves. Millions of thin silver memory plates stood inside sealed walls, each one holding the record of a war, treaty, plague, rebellion, migration, or royal death. The archive kept everything. That was its pride. That was its law. Nothing was forgotten. At least, that was what Vera believed, until she found the empty shelf. It was small at first glance, just one narrow gap between two war records. But Vera had worked in the archive for 40 years. She knew the shape of missing things. Dust had gathered evenly across the shelf, except in one clean rectangle. Something had been removed. Recently, she held her lamp closer. Its blue light moved across the label strip. War Record 7712, A. The Salt Moon Rebellion. War Record 7712, C. The 13-Day Siege of Vora. Vera frowned. There was no 7712B. Her fingers paused over the empty space. A missing record was impossible. Not rare, not unlikely. Impossible. The archive was older than most governments. Even dead empires still had records here. Even crimes committed by council founders were stored in locked sections. The archive did not judge. It preserved. So why was one record gone? Vera turned to her assistant, a young data clerk named Soren. Soren, she said quietly, read the index for war file 7712B. Soren looked up from his slate. There is no 7712B, senior archivist. There should be. He typed quickly, then stopped. The system skips from A to C. That is not a skip, Vera said. That is a wound. Soren gave a nervous smile, thinking she had made a joke. She had not. Vera stepped closer to the shelf and scanned the lower marker. Hidden under the dust was a faint burn mark, almost invisible. Not from fire, from administrative deletion. Someone had not stolen the record. Someone had erased its right to exist. That was worse. She placed her palm against the shelf, and the old archive system woke with a low hum. Manual trace, she ordered. Identify removed war record between 7712A and 7712C. The wall shimmered. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the system answered in a voice too calm for what it said. Access denied. Record sealed under council silence order. Soren's face changed. No one spoke. Even the old machines seemed to hold their breath. A silence order was not normal secrecy. Normal secrets had dates. Normal secrets expired after 100 years, or 500 years, or when all living witnesses died. A silence order had no end. It meant the council had decided that knowledge itself was dangerous. Vera slowly removed her hand. What was the name of the war? Soren whispered. The system should not have answered. But old machines had old habits. For one blink of light, a single line appeared on the wall before disappearing. The Human Contact War. Soren stepped back. Vera did not move. The word stayed in the room, even after the screen went dark. Human. She had seen that word only in myths, border reports, and children's warnings. Humanity was not part of common history. No living ambassador spoke for them. No trade route entered their territory. No school map showed their home system clearly. Some species said humans were extinct. Some said they had never existed. Some said they were still out there, behind a dead zone of silent stars, watching. Vera had never believed in ghost stories. But an erased war record was not a ghost story. It was evidence. Senior archivist, Soren said, his voice thin, we should leave this alone. Vera looked at him. He was young enough to think fear was wisdom. History does not belong to fear, she said. Soren swallowed. Council silence orders are punishable. So, is removing records. But the council removed it. That does not make it clean. She turned back to the shelf. Her old hands were steady, but inside her chest something cold had opened. The Human Contact War. Not conquest. Not rebellion. Contact. That word troubled her most. Wars of contact happened when two civilizations met for the first time and failed to understand each other. They were usually short, tragic, and full of mistakes. But no one erased short tragedies. No one buried mistakes under silence orders. Something else had happened. Vera walked to the central archive desk and opened a private search channel. She used her own authority key, then added 3 dead security codes she had memorized decades ago for forgotten maintenance manuals. The system resisted. She pushed harder. Search all indirect references, she said. Human contact war, secondary mentions, survivor notes, medical records, treaty fragments, ship logs. The archive lights dimmed. Soren rushed to the door. If this triggers an alert. It already has, Vera said. He froze. Far above them, hidden security bells were probably waking officials who had never visited the archive in person. Men and women in clean council chambers would see her name flashing beside forbidden terms. She had little time. The system produced one result. Only one. A damaged audio fragment from an unknown alien command ship. No date. No clear location. No official stamp. Vera opened it. Static filled the room. Then a voice came through. Broken. Panicked. Almost buried under alarms. Do not engage them again. Repeat, do not speak their name on open channels. They are not advancing like a fleet. They are correcting us. Soren's breathing grew louder. The voice continued. We thought they were defending one colony. We were wrong. They were mapping guilt. Every ship that fired. Every world that approved. Every officer who signed. They know. Somehow they know. A loud metallic crack cut through the recording. Then another voice shouted in the background. They're not targeting engines. They're targeting command memory. The first voice returned, shaking. If this reaches the council, tell them surrender is not enough. Apology is not enough. They do not want our planets. They do not want tribute. They want the truth recorded. The audio collapsed into static. Then, very faintly, one final sentence came through. They're coming for the archives. The room went silent again. Vera stared at the dead waveform. For the first time in many years, she felt afraid. Not because humanity had been brutal. Many species were brutal. Not because they had won. Many species had won wars. She was afraid because the recording did not describe conquerors. It described judges. And judges were harder to stop than armies. Soren whispered, "What does that mean? Coming for the archives?" Vera looked around the sealed room, at the endless shelves of memory plates. Every civilization lied about itself. That was the secret foundation of history. Victors softened their cruelty. Councils hid their failures. Survivors changed details to keep living. Archives did not remove lies. They stored them beside the truth and waited for someone brave enough to compare them. But what if humanity had not allowed the lie? What if the war had not been about land, power, or revenge? What if the most brutal war in galactic history began because someone tried to erase what they had done? Vera searched again. Find all records modified within 50 years after the human contact war. The system hesitated. Then the entire wall filled with results. Thousands. Soren covered his mouth. Treaties rewritten. Battle reports shortened. Council speeches altered. Names removed. Planetary losses reduced. Command orders sealed. The human contact war had not vanished alone. A whole age had been edited around it. Vera felt her anger rise slowly, clean and sharp. The galaxy did not tremble at humanity's name because humans were monsters. It trembled because humanity had seen the galaxy clearly, and the galaxy had not survived being seen. A heavy knock struck the archive door. Once, then again. Security. Soren looked at Vera with wide eyes. What do we do? Vera did not answer immediately. She copied the damaged audio fragment onto a small black memory chip, an illegal act that would end her career if discovered. Then she placed the chip inside the hollow ring on her left hand. The knocking grew louder. Senior Archivist Vera, a voice called from outside. Step away from the terminal. Vera closed the search screen. But before it vanished, one final hidden file appeared. It had no number, no title, only a human phrase translated into galactic standard. We did not start the war. We finished the record. Vera's throat tightened. Now she understood why the council had erased it. Not because humanity had lost control, because humanity had forced everyone else to remember. And in a galaxy built on polished lies, memory was the most brutal weapon of all. The door began to open. Vera turned to Soren and spoke softly. Whatever happens next, remember this. He nodded, trembling. She looked at the empty shelf one last time. "The missing record is not gone," she said. "It is waiting to be found." Then the security lights turned red, and the oldest room in the Galactic Archive filled with armed officers. The officers entered without shouting. That made them more frightening. They wore dark archive security uniforms, not battlefield armor. Their weapons were small, silent, and legal. These are not soldiers sent to kill. These were men and women sent to remove a problem cleanly. Senior Archivist Vera had seen that kind of silence before. It was the silence of people who believed they were protecting civilization. The lead officer stopped in front of her desk. His nameplate read Commander Irel. His eyes moved once to Soren, once to the closed terminal, then back to Vera. "Senior Archivist," he said, "you accessed sealed material." Vera folded her hands. "I accessed a missing record." "There is no missing record. There is an empty shelf. Old numbering errors happen." "No," Vera said. "Lies happen." Soren lowered his head. Commander Irel's face hardened by only a little. He was trained not to show anger. "You will come with us." Vera looked past him at the shelves. Millions of memory plates waited in darkness. Some held victories. Some held shame. Some held names that no one spoke anymore. But none of them had felt alive until today. "Will I be charged?" she asked. "You will be questioned." "That means no." He did not answer. Vera smiled faintly. "So the archive still teaches truth, even to its guards." For a moment, Irel looked tired. Then he stepped aside. As Vera walked toward the door, Soren suddenly spoke. She did not do anything wrong. Every officer looked at him. The young clerk went pale, but he continued. "The record existed. I saw it." The system answered. Vera wanted to stop him. Too late. Commander Irel turned. "You also accessed the material?" Soren opened his mouth, then closed it. Vera said, "He followed my order." "That will be noted." They took both of them. The lift carried them upward through the black layers of the archive. No one spoke. The walls passed like dark water. Vera could hear Soren breathing too fast beside her. She wanted to tell him not to be afraid, but that would have been dishonest. Fear was reasonable now. At the top level, they were led into a white chamber with one table and 3 chairs. No windows again. Vera almost laughed. The council loved stars only when stars were obedient. An old councilwoman waited inside. Her silver robes marked her as High Custodian of Historical Stability. Vera knew the title well. It sounded noble. It meant cleaner of dangerous truths. The councilwoman looked at Soren first. "Leave the clerk outside." "No," Vera said. Commander Irel moved his hand toward his weapon. The councilwoman raised 2 fingers. He stopped. "Very well," she said. "Let the child learn why some doors must stay closed." Soren sat down stiffly. The councilwoman placed a thin black plate on the table. Not silver like archive records. Black. Human black. Vera felt the room grow colder. "You found a thread," the councilwoman said. "Most archivists would have cut it." "Most archivists are trained to preserve," Vera replied. "They're trained to preserve civilization. Civilization without truth is only decoration." The councilwoman's eyes sharpened. "That sentence has killed worlds." She touched the black plate. A projection opened above the table. Not a battle, a courtroom. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in a vast circular hall, their faces younger than the statues Vera had seen in public plazas. This was old footage, very old. At the center stood 3 humans. No armor, no crowns, no glowing weapons. Just 3 humans in dark formal uniforms. 1 old woman, 1 wounded man with a metal support around his neck. 1 quiet young officer holding a box of memory plates. The councilwoman spoke softly. This was the final hearing of the human contact war. Soren leaned forward despite himself. Vera did not blink. The old human woman in the recording stepped forward. Her voice was calm. "You attacked a medical colony after receiving its civilian status. You burned the evacuation corridor. You erased the distress signal. Then you reported that no civilians were present." The hall erupted. Alien delegates shouted. Some denied. Some demanded the humans leave. Some called the statement an insult. The human woman waited. She did not raise her voice. The young officer opened the box and placed 1 memory plate into the court system. A child's voice filled the hall. Not crying. Counting. 1 light. 2 lights. 3 lights. Mom said, "Don't look at the sky. The sky is falling." The shouting stopped. The recording continued. Metal groaned. People prayed in different languages. A human medic whispered names into a recorder so bodies could be identified later. Then silence. The human woman looked around the hall. "That was Colony Arden," she said. "Population, 12,409. Survivors, 6. No one spoke. The wounded human man stepped forward next. "We are not here for tribute. We are not here for territory. We are here for admission." One alien admiral slammed his claws on the table. "You have already destroyed 13 fleets." The wounded human looked at him. 14, he said. "Your correction file was incomplete." The admiral went still. Vera understood then. This was not only war. This was accounting. Every lie answered with proof. Every hidden order returned to its owner. Every false report opened in front of witnesses. The projection shifted. Battle maps appeared. Human fleets did not move like conquerors. They moved like investigators with weapons. They bypassed innocent worlds. They ignored supply stations that had not joined the attack. They disabled command ships, copied their records, and left. But when they found a world that had signed extermination orders, they did not negotiate first. They removed its ability to make war. Shipyards cut apart. Weapon moons cracked. Command towers erased from orbit. Brutal, yes, but not blind. That was what made it worse. Rage could be forgiven after time. Precision lived forever. The councilwoman stopped the recording. "The galaxy trembles at humanity's name," she said, "because they taught us something we were not ready to learn." Vera's voice was low. "That crime survived their criminals." "No," the councilwoman said. "That records can become weapons." She leaned closer. After the war, every government almost collapsed. Not from human attacks. From truth. Citizens learned what their leaders had approved. Species turned on their own councils. Military houses fell. Religious courts broke. Trade unions burned their archives before humans could reach them. Soren whispered. So the council erased it. "We contained it," the councilwoman said. "You lied. We stopped a second galactic collapse." Vera touched the hollow ring on her finger under the table. The copied audio chip was still there. Small. Illegal. Heavy. "Why show me this?" she asked. "Because you are old enough to understand cost. I'm also old enough to recognize fear wearing formal robes." For the first time, the councilwoman looked angry. "You think humanity were heroes?" Vera did not answer. The councilwoman restarted the projection. This time, the image showed a dead system. Not damaged. Dead. Planets intact. Cities standing. Stations floating. But no signals. No movement. No lights. "What happened there?" Soren asked. The councilwoman's voice became flat. Vayrant's system. They refused the hearing. They destroyed their own civilian records and blamed humans. They launched biological weapons at 3 neutral refugee convoys to hide witnesses. The projection zoomed toward the central world. Humanity answered. Vera waited. "What did they do?" The councilwoman looked at her. "They did not destroy the planets. They destroyed memory." Soren frowned. "Memory? Every command network, every cultural archive, every military record, every royal lineage bank, every legal identity vault. Gone. The people lived, but their empire forgot itself overnight." The room felt airless. "That is impossible," Soren said. The councilwoman nodded toward the black plate. Humanity made many impossible things practical. Vera looked at the dead system. Now the title made sense. The war was so brutal that the galaxy trembled whenever humanity was spoken of, not because humans killed the most, but because they knew exactly what to take. Some species feared death. Empires feared memory loss more. The councilwoman closed the projection. "Now you know why the record was sealed." Vera sat back. Yes, she knew, but not in the way the councilwoman wanted. The council had not hidden humanity to protect peace. It had hidden humanity to protect every powerful family, military order, and government that had survived by pretending the war was only violence. The truth was sharper. Humanity had forced the galaxy to look at itself, and the galaxy had chosen blindness. Commander Irel stepped forward. The copied fragment, senior archivist. Soren turned quickly toward her. Vera did not move. The councilwoman sighed. "You are not the first to find a piece. You will not be the last. give it willingly, and your clerk keeps his future. There it was, the real weapon of governments. Not guns, leverage. Vera looked at Soren. He was young, frightened, and brave in the foolish way good people often were before the world trained it out of them. She removed the ring. Commander Irel held out his hand, but Vera did not place it there. She set it on the black plate. The councilwoman's eyes widened. Do not. The ring clicked. Old archive systems loved old keys. The human plate woke. A soft voice filled the room. Not alien, human. If this record has opened, then someone is still hiding what happened. The walls flickered. Far below, the archive answered. Every sealed shelf, every hidden index, every edited file connected to the black plate at once. Commander Irel grabbed for the ring. Too late. The human voice continued. We did not leave this for revenge. We left it because truth buried alive becomes war again. Across the chamber wall, names began appearing. Colony Ardent, Vayrant System, 14 fleets, 6 survivors, burned evacuation corridor, false surrender order, council silence order, then more, thousands more. Soren stood slowly. The councilwoman whispered, "Stop it." Vera looked at her. "I cannot." And for once, that was the truth. The archive was not broadcasting yet. It was remembering first, pulling broken facts together, repairing the wound left between 7712A and 7712C. The black plate opened one final file. A human commander appeared, older than the others. Face tired, eyes steady. He spoke as if he knew someone like Vera would one day listen. To whoever finds this, do not worship us. Do not fear us blindly. We were not clean. We were not gentle. We were humans at war, and war makes monsters possible in every species. He paused, but remember why it began. Remember who lied. Remember the dead correctly. That is all we ask. The projection faded. No one moved. Then, deep under their feet, the Galactic Archive changed its public index. A single missing file returned. War Record 7712B, the Human Contact War. Soren started crying silently. Commander Irel lowered his weapon. The councilwoman looked suddenly very old. Vera picked up her empty ring and placed it back on her finger. Outside the sealed chamber, alarms spread through the archive. Across nearby systems, historians, students, ministers, and ordinary citizens would soon see a forbidden title appear in their networks. Some would panic. Some would deny it. Some would finally understand why their grandparents lowered their voices at one word. Humanity. Vera walked to the door. "Where are you going?" the councilwoman asked. "To my desk," Vera said. "You have started a crisis." "No," Vera replied. "I have restored a record." She looked once at Soren. "Come, clerk. History has worked for us." And behind them, on the black plate, the human message remained glowing in quiet white letters. "We did not start the war. We finished the record." By morning, the galaxy was no longer quiet. The restored record did not spread like a normal file. It spread like a wound opening. First, it appeared inside university history networks, then inside military academies, then inside private family archives, legal courts, old embassy vaults, and children's learning tablets. No one knew how the human plate had done it. It had not hacked the archive. It had simply reminded the archive what it was built to do: preserve. Vera stood in the central hall while thousands of silver memory plates unlocked across the walls. Their seals broke one by one with soft clicks, like rain falling in a metal forest. Soren stood beside her, pale and silent. Around them, archivists whispered in fear. Some looked at Vera like she had saved history. Others looked at her like she had started the next war. Maybe both were true. Across the main screen, one sentence repeated in every known language. War Record 7712B. Public restoration in progress. Then the testimonies began. Not battle scenes. Names. A child from Colony Ardent. A medic who recorded the dying. A cargo pilot who ignored council orders and saved 6 refugees. An alien officer who admitted he signed a false report. A human captain who confessed that his fleet burned a command moon after surrender talks failed. The record did not protect anyone. Not aliens. Not humans. That was why it felt real. The council tried to stop it within the first hour. They sent emergency orders. The archive ignored them. They cut outside relay access. The record copied itself through old treaty backups. They declared historical contamination. The public laughed, then screamed, then began reading. By the second hour, statues were covered with black cloth. By the third, old family names vanished from official buildings. By the fourth, the High Council locked itself inside its chamber and called Vera a threat to galactic stability. She watched the announcement from her desk. Commander Irel stood near the door, no longer pointing a weapon. His face had changed during the night. He had read the record too. "You should hide," he said. Vera kept sorting files. "I am too old to hide under furniture. They will blame you. They should blame the ones who lied. They are dead." Vera looked up. "Their power is not." Soren entered carrying a stack of fresh memory plates. His hands were still shaking, but his eyes were clearer now. "Senior Archivist," he said, "there is another signal." Vera took the top plate. "From where?" Soren swallowed. "From outside map space." The hall went still. Even the clicking shelves seemed to stop. A signal from outside map space was rare. A signal connected to Human War Record 7712B was impossible. Vera placed the plate into the reader. The screen turned black. For several seconds, there was only static. Then a symbol appeared. Not a flag. A simple white line forming the shape of Earth's old moon. Under it came 5 words. "Record restoration confirmed." We heard. No one breathed. Commander Irel took one step back. Soren whispered, "They are alive." Vera did not answer. The message continued. "Do not fear our return. Fear only the reason we had to leave." Then a human woman appeared on screen. She was older, with gray hair tied behind her head. Her uniform was plain. No medals, no crown, no threat in her voice. "My name is Mara Ellison," she said. "I speak for the Human Witness Fleet." The word struck the room harder than any weapon. Witness Fleet. Not War Fleet. Not Empire. Witness. Mara looked tired, as if her people had carried silence for centuries. "Long ago, we entered your galaxy as strangers. We asked for contact. We were answered with fear, ambition, and fire. What followed was brutal. We will not soften that truth. Humanity fought with terrible force." She paused, but the greater crime came after. The dead were edited. The guilty were hidden. The survivors were asked to live inside a lie. Vera felt her throat tighten. Mara continued, "We left one condition behind. If the record was ever restored by your own hands, we would answer. Not to conquer, not to punish, to witness." The screen shifted. Deep space appeared. At first, Vera saw only darkness. Then the stars moved. No, not stars. Ships. Thousands of them. Human vessels waited beyond mapped space, dark and silent, their hulls scarred by age but still alive with power. They were not arranged in attack formation. They formed a circle, a courtroom shape. The galaxy had feared an invasion. Humanity had brought witnesses. In the council chamber, panic exploded. Vera could hear it through emergency channels. Ministers shouted for defense fleets. Military houses demanded preemptive strikes. Old noble families begged for private evacuations. Mara's voice cut through every channel. "We are not entering sovereign territory. We are not firing weapons. We are opening the final archive." A new file appeared. Human casualty record, complete. Then another. Alien civilian casualty record, complete. Then another. Human war crime admissions, complete. The room changed. Fear shifted into something heavier. Because humans had not returned to prove only alien guilt. They had returned with their own shame too. Vera opened the human admissions file. It showed names. Human names. Captains who crossed lines. Soldiers who killed after orders stopped. Commanders who used fear as a shortcut. Scientists who built weapons they later hated. Every crime was recorded. Every victim named where possible. Every punishment listed. Soren looked at the screen, stunned. They recorded themselves too. Vera nodded slowly. "That is why the galaxy trembles," she said. "Not because humans were perfect, because they refused to let even themselves escape the record." The council's emergency broadcast interrupted again. High Custodian Valis appeared, the same councilwoman who had tried to stop Vera. Her voice was formal, but her eyes were afraid. "Citizens of the Galactic Union, remain calm. The restored material may contain hostile historical manipulation. Do not interact with unauthorized human files." Mara Ellison appeared beside her on every screen, not forcing entry, Simply present. Custodian Valis, Mara said. Your family signed Silence Order 7. Valis froze. A document opened. Her ancestor's seal. His voice. His vote to erase Colony Ardent from public record. Valis stared at it like a blade had entered her chest. Mara's voice softened. You're not guilty of his crime, but you're responsible for what you choose now. That sentence ended the Council's control, not with an explosion, with a choice. One by one, public officials began opening their archives. Some confessed, some resigned, some tried to run. The archive recorded all of it. By nightfall, millions had gathered across planets under public screens. They did not chant for war. They did not celebrate humanity. They stood in silence, reading the names of the dead. For the first time in centuries, the phrase human contact war was spoken openly. It did not summon destruction. It summoned memory. Vera stood alone on the archive balcony as artificial dawn rose over the capital. Soren found her there. What happens now, he asked. Vera watched the sky. Far above, no human ships appeared. They remained beyond the border, exactly as promised. Now, she said, history becomes painful. Will the galaxy survive it? Vera thought of the empty shelf, the black plate, the child counting falling lights, the human commander asking not to be worshipped. Yes, she said at last, but it will not remain innocent. Soren leaned on the railing. Were humans monsters? Vera was quiet for a long time. Then she answered carefully. They were what war made of them, and they were what memories saved from them. Below, the archive doors opened to the public. Thousands entered. Students, workers, soldiers, survivors, children whose teachers had lied without knowing they were lying. They came not to see weapons. They came to read. Vera returned to the oldest room one final time. The empty shelf was no longer empty. A black human plate now stood between 7712A and 7712C. Its surface was plain, almost humble. She placed her hand on it. The plate warmed under her palm. A final message appeared, meant only for the keeper of the record. Thank you for letting the dead speak. Vera closed her eyes. For 40 years, she had believed the archive kept history safe. Now she understood something deeper. History did not need safety. It needed courage. When she opened her eyes, Soren was waiting by the doorway with a fresh label strip. What should we write under the record? He asked. Vera took the strip and thought carefully. Not human victory, not galactic defeat, not the brutal war. Those were too small. She wrote, the war that ended when truth returned. Soren placed the label beneath the plate. Far beyond mapped space, the human witness fleet received the update. One by one, its ships turned away from the galaxy. Their duty was done. They had not come back to rule. They had come back to see whether the galaxy was finally brave enough to remember. And this time, when humanity's name was spoken, the galaxy still trembled, but not only with fear, with shame, with respect, and with the quiet promise that no war would ever again be buried so deeply that the dead had to wait centuries to be heard. 3 months after the record returned, the galaxy stopped pretending it was healed. The first weeks had been full of noise. Speeches, apologies, public trials, broken monuments, new laws written in shaking hands. But after the noise came the harder thing. Silence. Not the old silence of fear. A new silence. The silence of people who had finally read the truth and did not know where to place their anger. Senior archivist Vera watched it from the archive every day. Families came to read names. Soldiers came to find orders their commanders had hidden. Students came with notebooks and left without writing a word. Even children came, holding the hands of adults who had no answers for them. The human contact war was no longer a missing record. It was everywhere. And still, one file remained sealed. Not by the Council, by humanity. It appeared at the end of the restored record as a black title with no access key. Final witness testimony. Soren found it first. He entered Vera's office late in the evening, carrying a small reader close to his chest. Senior archivist, he said, the last file changed. Vera looked up from her desk. The old lamp beside her flickered. Since the restoration, the archive systems had been unstable, as if truth itself had forced old machines to remember how to breathe. What changed? She asked. It has a date now. Vera stood slowly. Which date? Soren swallowed. Tomorrow. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Outside the office, the great archive hall was almost empty. Only a few night clerks moved between shelves. Their footsteps echoed softly, careful not to disturb the dead. Vera walked with Soren to the oldest room. The black human plate waited in its place. No guard stopped them now. Commander Iril had resigned from security and joined the Public Record Commission. High Custodian Valis had stepped down after reading her family's silence order aloud before the council. The old system had not fallen in one day, but its walls had cracks now. Enough light entered through cracks. Vera placed her hand on the human plate. The sealed title opened. A message appeared. Final witness arrival confirmed. Soren frowned. Arrival? The floor trembled. Not violently. Gently. Like the archive had heard a footstep from very far away. Every screen in the room turned toward the same image. A single human ship had crossed the border. Not the witness fleet. Only one ship. Small compared to the vessels shown in old war footage. Its hull was dark, old, and scarred. It carried no visible weapons. No escort. No threat signal. It moved slowly toward the archive world. The public channels filled with panic within seconds. But the ship sent only one message. I'm not here to judge. I am here to finish my sentence. Vera read it twice. My sentence, she whispered. Soren looked at her. A prisoner? No, Vera said. A witness. The ship landed at dawn. No army surrounded it. That was Vera's request. Only archivists waited on the white stone landing field. Soren stood beside her, trying to look calm and failing. Behind them, thousands watched from a safe distance, silent under the pale morning sky. The ship opened with a tired hiss. A human stepped out. He was old, older than Vera had expected any living human to be. His body was supported by a narrow metal frame attached to his spine and legs. His skin was lined deeply. His hair was white. One eye was natural. The other was a small dark lens that moved with quiet mechanical focus. He carried no weapon, only a thin box. When he reached Vera, he stopped and gave a small bow. Senior Archivist Vera, he said. His voice was weak but clear. My name is Elias Rohn, former record officer of the human ship Mercy Ledger. Soren's eyes widened. The name appeared in the war record. Mercy Ledger had been the ship that collected testimony after Colony Ardent. Vera bowed back. You are the final witness? Elias looked past her at the archive. I'm the last one who was there and still remembers with a living mind. The crowd behind them seemed to hold one breath. Vera's voice softened. Why come now? Elias lifted the thin box. Because records are not enough. He walked with them into the archive. No one spoke as he passed. Aliens of 100 species watched the first living human to enter their capital in centuries. Some stared with fear, some with shame, some with hatred they had inherited but never understood. Elias did not look like a nightmare. He looked like a tired man, carrying something too heavy for his hands. Inside the central hall, a seat had been prepared. He refused it. I stood during the hearing, he said. I will stand now. His metal frame locked around his legs. Vera activated the public record. Every screen across the galaxy opened. Elias Rohn looked into them. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he began. I was 23 when the war started. I thought history was clean. I thought if we recorded facts, justice would follow. He gave a faint, bitter smile. I was young. No one moved. I recorded Colony Ardent. I recorded the 6 survivors. I recorded the first order that proved the attack was not an accident. I also recorded the first human retaliation. His lens clicked softly. We told ourselves it was measured. We told ourselves it was necessary. Sometimes it was not. Soren looked down. Elias continued. The galaxy remembers humanity as brutal. That is fair. We became brutal. We learned how to break fleets, governments, command systems, identities, and lies. We learned quickly. Too quickly. He opened the box. Inside was a small child's cloth shoe. Burned at the edge. Vera felt the hall change. This belonged to a child from Ardent, Elias said. Her name was Nema Vale. She counted lights while the sky fell. You have heard her voice. Across the hall, many lowered their heads. I kept this because I hated you, Elias said. The words were simple. No shouting. That made them worse. I hated every species that voted to hide the attack. I hated every officer who called dead children a border error. I hated every neutral world that stayed quiet because trade was easier than courage. His hands trembled around the shoe. And then I hated us. The screens were silent. Because hatred is useful in the first fire. It keeps you standing. It makes your hands steady. But after a while, it asks for more. It asks you to enjoy what should only be endured. Vera closed her eyes for 1 second. This was the truth no record could fully hold. Not numbers. Not maps. The shape of a soul after war. Elias placed a shoe on the archive table. I came to finish my sentence because the old recording ends before my final words. The council cut them. Humanity kept them sealed until your people restored the record by choice. He looked directly at Vera. You gave the dead back their names. Now you must give the living back their burden. Vera whispered, "What burden?" Elias answered, "To remember without becoming hungry for revenge." The hall remained still. He turned toward the public screens. So here the final witness testimony. The human contact war was brutal. The galaxy trembled at humanity's name because we made truth unavoidable. But truth is not gentle. If used wrongly, it becomes another blade. His voice weakened, but he kept standing. Do not use this record to teach your children that humans were demons. Do not use it to teach them humans were gods. Teach them that ordinary people lied, obeyed, feared, hated, followed orders, looked away, and then called the result history. His metal frame made a soft sound as his legs shook. Vera stepped forward, but Elias raised one hand. "Let me finish." She stopped. Elias looked at the burned shoe. Nima Vale was not a symbol. She was a child. She liked sweet grain cakes. She hated medical lights. She was missing 2 front teeth. Her mother called her little star. His voice broke for the first time. When you remember the war, remember that. Not fleets first. Not weapons first. Not nations first. People first. Always people first. The final file opened behind him. Words appeared on the screen. Final testimony complete. But Elias was not done. He looked up one last time. Humanity's name made the galaxy tremble because we carried memory like a weapon. I am asking you now to carry it like a responsibility. Then his frame unlocked. His body almost fell. Soren reached him first. The young archivist caught the old human before he hit the floor. No one screamed. No one rushed with panic. The hall simply moved together. Medics came. Archivists cleared space. An alien child from the public crowd stepped forward and placed a small white flower beside Nima's shoe. Then another child did the same. Then a soldier. Then a judge. Then hundreds. By evening, the archive table was covered in flowers from worlds that once denied the dead existed. Elias lived for 3 more days. He spent them in a quiet room inside the archive, answering questions when he had strength. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not offer it cheaply. On the last day, Vera sat beside him. Through the window, stars burned over the capital. The oldest room had no windows, but this room did. Elias looked at the sky. "Are they still afraid of us?" he asked. "Yes," Vera said honestly. He nodded. "Good." She turned to him. He smiled faintly. Fear can keep hands away from weapons. But it must not be the only thing left. Vera was quiet. What should be left? Elias closed his eye. Memory. Names. And enough shame to choose better. He died before dawn. The galaxy did not bury him as a hero. That would have been too easy. Instead, the archive created a new hall. No statues. No flags. No victory murals. Only names. Human names. Alien names. No names. Unknown dead. Guilty. Innocent. Witnesses. Survivors. At the entrance, Vera placed one line from Elias's testimony. People first. Always people first. Years later, students would walk through that hall and ask why the galaxy still trembled at humanity's name. Their teachers would no longer whisper. They would say, because humanity once fought a war so brutal that no lie survived it. Then they would point to the names. And because the truth they left behind was heavier than any weapon. Senior archivist Vera grew old in that hall. Soren eventually took her place. The human witness fleet never returned. It did not need to. The record was complete now. And whenever humanity was spoken of, the galaxy still trembled. Not only from fear, but from the memory of what happened when the dead were erased. From the shame of what silence had protected. And from the promise carved into every archive door after that day. No civilization is safe because it forgets. It is only safe when it remembers honestly. Years after Elias Rohn died, the galaxy built a habit of remembering. At first, it was careful. Every school had one day each year where students read the names from the Human Contact War. Every military academy opened its first lesson with colony art. Every government office kept a public record wall, so no law could be signed without history watching. It looked like change. For a while, even Vera believed it was enough. But time had a way of polishing pain. A brutal truth, repeated too often, could become ceremony. Ceremony could become habit. Habit could become decoration. And decoration was where lies liked to hide. Soren was older now. Not old like Vera had been, but old enough to understand why she had spent her final years angry at comfortable people. He was senior archivist now. His hair had silver at the edges. His hands were steadier. His voice had become quieter because the archive had taught him that loud men often feared silence. Every morning, he walked through the Hall of Names. He always stopped at 3 places: Nima Vale, Elias Rohn, Vera of the Central Archive. 3 names that had changed him. 1 child, 1 witness, 1 archivist who had refused to look away. On the 9th anniversary of the record's restoration, Soren noticed something strange. A group of young officers entered the hall. They wore clean military uniforms. Their boots shone. Their faces were serious, but not troubled. They walked past the names quickly, as if the hall was only another required stop in their training tour. Their instructor stopped before the colony art wall and spoke in a bored voice. This event proves the importance of strategic transparency. Hidden actions can destabilize long-term political order. Soren turned slowly. Strategic transparency. Political order. The child's burned shoe sat behind glass only a few steps away, and they had turned her into a lesson about efficiency. Soren felt something cold move inside him. That evening, he went to the oldest room. The black human plate still stood between 7712A and 7712C. It had not spoken in years. The final witness testimony was complete. The human witness fleet had left. The galaxy had rebuilt its laws, its courts, its textbooks. But Soren placed his hand on the plate anyway. "I think we are forgetting again," he whispered. Nothing happened. He almost laughed at himself. Then the plate warmed. Not much, just enough. A single line appeared. "Forgetting does not begin with silence. It begins with comfort." Soren stepped back. The room seemed smaller than before. Below the sentence, another file opened. It was not from the past. It was dated that morning. A military proposal from the Outer Defense Coalition. Fully legal. Approved by 7 systems. Hidden under peaceful language. Its title was harmless. Border Stability Response Framework. But Soren had learned to fear harmless titles. He opened it. His eyes moved across the text. Resource pressure. Unstable frontier worlds. Preventive population control. Information delay protocols. Emergency archive restrictions. His stomach tightened. It was not colony art. Not yet. But it was the same road. Different uniforms. Different words. Same direction. A knock came at the door. Soren closed the file too late. A young archivist stood outside. Her name was Lyra. She reminded him painfully of himself when he had first followed Vera into trouble. "Senior archivist," she said, "the council delegation has arrived." Soren looked at the black plate, then at Lyra. "Good," he said. "Bring them here." She hesitated. "Here? To the sealed room." "It is not sealed anymore." The council delegation entered 20 minutes later. They were not like the old council. They were younger, elected after the Restoration crisis. They spoke often about openness. They gave speeches beside the Hall of Names. They used the word memory beautifully. That worried Soren most. The lead delegate, Minister Kale, smiled with practiced warmth. "Senior archivist, we received your urgent notice. Is there an issue with the anniversary ceremony?" "Yes," Soren said. "Cancel it." The smile vanished. "I beg your pardon?" "Cancel the ceremony. Open an investigation instead." The delegates exchanged looks. Soren touched the archive wall, and the Border Stability Response Framework appeared in the air. No one spoke. Minister Kale's jaw tightened. "That is a classified defense draft. It is a population control plan. It is a contingency framework. It delays public records. For security, it restricts archives. For stability." Soren looked at him. Those were the old words too. Kale's face hardened. "Be careful." Soren almost smiled. He had heard that warning before, many years ago, from armed officers entering the same room. "I'm being careful," he said. "That is why I'm speaking before the first child dies." The room went silent. Lyra stared at the document with horror growing across her face. One delegate whispered, "We did not approve action." "Not yet," Soren said. "That is how every terrible record begins." "Not yet." Minister Kale stepped closer. "You are comparing us to the criminals of the Human Contact War?" "No," Soren said. "I am comparing your language to theirs." That landed harder, because people could deny guilt. They could not easily deny words written in their own hands. Soren opened another file. The archive had found it after the human plate woke. An old order from before Colony Ardent. Not the attack order. Earlier than that. A planning document. Its language was calm, legal, and bloodless. Civilian presence probability, acceptable under strategic necessity. Soren placed it beside Kale's proposal. The new document read, "Civilian disruption risk, acceptable under frontier stabilization necessity." The two sentences hovered together. Different centuries. Same soul. Lyra covered her mouth. One of the younger delegates sat down as if her legs had failed. Minister Kale did not move. "You do not understand border politics," he said. Soren nodded. "You may be right." That surprised him. Soren continued, "I do not command fleets. I do not manage hunger, migration, piracy, or frontier panic. I know your work is hard." Kale's expression softened by a fraction. Then Soren said, "But I understand records. And records show that mass harm almost never begins with monsters laughing in dark rooms. It begins with tired officials choosing clean words for ugly things." No one answered. The black human plate pulsed once. A final projection opened. Vera, not a recording Soren had seen before. She was older in it, sitting at her desk, wrapped in a dark shawl. Her voice was thin but sharp. "If this message appears, then someone has found a future lie wearing respectable clothing." Soren closed his eyes. Of course, she had left one more message. Vera looked straight ahead. "Do not ask whether your age is better than ours. Every age thinks that. Ask whether your records would survive honest reading." The projection faded. The room held its breath. Lyra stepped forward first. "Senior Archivist," she said, voice shaking. "What do we do?" Soren looked at the council delegates. "We do what should have been done before Ardent." He touched the wall. The proposal copied into the public review system. Minister Kale lunged forward. "Stop!" But none of the archivists moved to help him. Not this time. Across the capital, screens lit up. Across border worlds, citizens received the document meant to shape their lives without their knowledge. Across military halls, young officers who had walked past Nima Vale's name too quickly were forced to read the sentence beside its older twin. The reaction was not peaceful. There was anger, denial, fear, political collapse in 3 systems. Emergency resignations, public arguments that lasted months. But no colony burned, no child counted falling lights, no false report needed to be erased. The war did not return, because the record had arrived before the weapons. 1 year later, Soren stood again in the Hall of Names. This time, the young officers who entered did not walk quickly. Their instructor stopped before the burned shoe and said nothing for a long while. Then he spoke. "This is not a lesson about old evil," he said. "This is a warning about tomorrow." Soren felt his chest loosen. Lyra stood beside him now, no longer only a junior archivist. She carried herself differently after the investigation. Trouble had aged her, but not broken her. "Do you think humanity knew this would happen?" she asked. Soren looked toward the oldest room. "I think they knew us." Far beyond mapped space, no human ship answered. No witness fleet returned. No commander appeared to praise them. That was right. The galaxy did not need humanity to save it every time. It needed the courage to read its own records before they became graves. Soren walked to the archive entrance that evening. Above the doors, the old promise remained carved in black stone. No civilization is safe because it forgets. It is only safe when it remembers honestly. Below it, Lyra had added a new line. Smaller, simple, harder to obey. And honesty must happen before the dead can prove it. Soren stood there until the hall lights dimmed. For the first time, humanity's name did not make him think only of brutal war. It made him think of a hand placed on a forbidden shelf. A child's voice. An old witness standing when his body wanted to fall. And Vera, who had taught him that history was not dead paper. It was a door. Every generation either opened it early or waited until someone screamed from the other side. This time, the galaxy opened it early, and somewhere in the deep dark beyond known stars, perhaps humanity heard. Not as rulers, not as judges, only as witnesses. And if they did hear, Soren hoped they understood one thing. The record was still alive, and so was the promise. 10 years after the record returned, the archive received a message with no sender. It arrived during the quiet hour before dawn. Senior archivist Soren was alone in the oldest room, checking old war files by hand. He still did that sometimes. The younger archivist trusted the system more than paper, more than shelves, more than dust. Soren trusted dust. Dust told the truth about what had been touched. The black human plate sat where it always had, between the Salt Moon Rebellion and the 13-day siege of Vora. It had not spoken since the border proposal crisis. Then the room lights dimmed. A single line appeared on the wall. The last door is ready. Soren stared at it. His heart did not race like it once had. Age had made fear slower, but deeper. "What door?" he whispered. The plate answered. The one humanity never opened. Behind him, Lyra entered with 2 cups of bitter archive tea. She stopped when she saw the wall. "Oh," she said softly, "that cannot be good." Soren almost smiled. "No, it usually isn't." The wall changed. A star map appeared. Not of the galaxy. Beyond it, far past map space. Past the dead zone. Past the place where the witness fleet had vanished. A small white point blinked. Lyra stepped closer. "Is that a human system?" "No," Soren said. The archive translated the coordinates. "First contact site." The words made the room colder. Soren had always assumed the human contact war began at Colony Ardent, but the map said otherwise. A new file opened. Before Ardent, there was Doorfall. Lyra read the line twice. Doorfall. Soren touched the plate. A projection rose. A small station floated near a quiet moon. It looked fragile. Half science post, half listening tower. Its lights were warm. Its hull markings were human. Doorfall Station. The first place humanity had waited for the galaxy. The recording began with laughter. That was what hurt first. Human voices. Young, tired, excited. They were not soldiers. They were researchers, translators, cooks, engineers, children of crew families. One human man held up a cup toward the camera. "To whoever comes first," he said, smiling, "please like soup." The room around Soren felt suddenly too still. The recording shifted. An unknown alien scout ship appeared near the moon. No weapons fired. No alarms. A human voice said, "Signal received." Repeating greeting package. Doorfall opened its lights like a flower. Then the alien ship went dark. For 13 seconds, nothing happened. Then 12 more alien ships arrived. Lyra whispered, "No." Soren already knew. The first shots were small. Testing shots. The station did not understand it was under attack until the third strike cut through its living ring. Human voices filled the recording. Not heroic. Not dramatic. Confused. Why are they firing? Send the greeting again. Medical bay is gone. Where are the children? Do not return fire. Repeat, do not return fire. Soren closed his eyes. This was before the brutal war. Before humanity became the name that made fleets tremble. This was the moment before the wound learned teeth. The projection showed one final human woman in the control room. Blood floated near her face in the low gravity. She held the transmission key with both hands. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "To unknown vessels, we came to speak. We still choose that if you stop." Another strike hit. The screen went white, then black. Lyra stood frozen. Soren felt old anger rise inside him, but this time it was not sharp. It was tired, heavy, almost ashamed. Why was this hidden? Lyra asked. The human plate answered with another line. Because even humanity feared what this memory could do to them. A second recording opened. Mara Ellison appeared, younger than before. "This file was sealed by human vote," she said. "Not by your council. By us." She looked directly into the camera. Doorfall was the first wound. For generations, we used it to justify everything. Every strike, every harsh law, every mercy denied. When we said, "Remember Doorfall," some meant remember the dead. Others meant never forgive. Soren listened without moving. Mara continued. "So we sealed it until your galaxy learned the difference between memory and hunger. If this file has opened, Then the archive has judged that you are ready to know the beginning. Lyra's voice was small. Are we ready? Soren looked at the projection of the broken station. No, he said, but maybe readiness is not the point. By midday, the Doorfall file was public. The galaxy changed again. Not with panic this time, with grief. For years, citizens had understood the human contact war as a terrible answer to alien crimes. Colony Arden had explained the fire, but Doorfall showed something older. Humanity had not entered the galaxy with suspicion. It had entered with soup jokes, translation packets, and open lights. That made the later brutality more painful, not less. People gathered again in the Hall of Names. This time they added Doorfall. Researchers, children, cooks, engineers, translators, the first human dead. But Soren refused to let the new hall become a place of simple blame. He ordered one more wall built beside it. On that wall, he placed Mara's warning. Memory is not permission to become hungry. Some hated him for it. They said Doorfall proved humanity had been right to make the galaxy tremble. Soren answered, Doorfall proves why trembling is not enough. One night, a young student came to him after the public reading. She was from a species whose ancestors had fired on Doorfall. Her eyes were red from crying. Senior archivist, she asked, how do we live with this? Soren looked at the names. He had asked the same question as a young man, though with different words. You live by not making the dead useful only to your anger, he said. The student did not understand at first. So Soren pointed to Nima Vale's shoe, then to the Doorfall cook who had joked about soup, then to Elias Roan's testimony. They were people, he said, not tools, not flags, not excuses. People. She nodded slowly. And if others use them as excuses? Then you correct the record before the weapons come out. Years passed. The Doorfall file became part of every first contact lesson. No ship was allowed to approach an unknown species without 3 independent witnesses, open logs, and civilian protection laws. Every greeting protocol now began with one sentence translated into all known languages. We are here to speak. We will record honestly. It was not perfect. Nothing living was perfect, but it was better. On Soren's final day as senior archivist, he returned to the oldest room alone. His hands had become thin, his steps slow. Lyra was ready to replace him, though she still pretended she was not. He placed his palm on the black human plate. I think I understand now, he said. The plate warmed. No message appeared. Soren smiled faintly. You do not need to answer everything. He looked at the once empty shelf. The war had begun with a door opened in hope. It had grown brutal because fear answered first. Then lies had buried the dead. Then memory had returned like fire. And finally, after many years, the galaxy had learned that history was not meant to make people comfortable. It was meant to keep them awake. Lyra found him there a little later. Senior archivist, she said gently, the ceremony is ready. He nodded. In the central hall, thousands waited. Not only officials, not only scholars, ordinary people. That was what Vera would have wanted. Soren stood before them one last time. My first teacher told me history was a wound, he said. I was young, so I thought wounds only needed closing. He looked toward the Hall of Names. I was wrong. Some wounds close too quickly. Infection hides under clean skin. History must be cleaned again and again, even when it hurts. The hall was silent. Humanity's name once made the galaxy tremble because of a war so brutal no lie survived it. But if we remember only the brutality, we fail the record. If we remember only human strength, we fail the dead. If we remember only alien guilt, we fail the future. He took one slow breath. Remember Doorfall. Remember Ardent. Remember the crimes. Remember the admissions. Remember the shame. But above all, remember people first. Lyra lowered her head. Soren placed the senior archivist seal into her hand. Then he stepped aside. That evening, above the archive's main doors, a final line was carved under the older promises. The first line had been Vera's. No civilization is safe because it forgets. It is only safe when it remembers honestly. The second line had been Lyra's. And honesty must happen before the dead can prove it. The third line was Soren's. Memory is a door. Open it before fear does. Far beyond mapped space, no human fleet returned. No signal came. No approval. No warning. Only stars. But in the oldest room, the black plate finally changed. Its surface faded from black to silver. Not erased. Accepted. It had become part of the archive now. Not foreign. Not forbidden. Not waiting. Complete. And whenever humanity's name was spoken after that, the galaxy still trembled. But the trembling had changed. It was no longer the simple fear of a brutal war. It was the deep, careful shaking of a civilization holding a dangerous truth with both hands. A truth that said, the worst wars do not begin when weapons fire. They begin when someone decides the record can wait. And the best peace does not begin when enemies forgive. It begins when the living finally stop asking the dead to stay silent. Lyra became senior archivist on a quiet morning. There was no grand music, no military salute, no council parade, only the soft sound of archive doors opening. She liked it that way. The archive had seen enough ceremony. It had seen how beautiful words could hide ugly decisions. It had seen leaders stand beside the Hall of Names, speak about memory, then return to private rooms and ask how much truth the public could safely handle. Lyra did not trust beautiful speeches anymore. She trusted records. On her first day, she walked alone to the oldest room. The black human plate was silver now. It looked like every other plate, but she knew it was not the same. Some things could be accepted into history and still remain dangerous. She placed one hand on it. "I'm not Vera," she said softly. "I'm not Soren. I do not know if I am brave enough." The plate stayed silent. Lyra smiled sadly. Good. No easy answers. She turned to leave. Then the floor shook. Not from the archive. From the sky. An emergency warning opened across every wall. Unknown fleet entering outer border. For 1 second, Lyra felt the old fear return. Humanity? No. The map showed ships from the far rim, a region that had refused most Union law after the Restoration. Their governments had called the human contact war records moral poison. They said memory made civilizations weak. Now, they had come with weapons. Lyra ran to the central hall. Screens showed hundreds of ships crossing the border. Not enough to conquer the galaxy, but enough to burn 3 worlds before anyone stopped them. Their leader appeared on public channels. He was a hard-faced admiral named Vorik. "The Union has become sick," he said. "You worship old guilt. You bow to human ghosts. You teach children to fear action. We will cleanse the archive and free the galaxy from dead voices." The hall went silent. Lyra felt every eye turn toward her. This was the nightmare everyone had feared. Not humanity returning. Something worse. A living civilization choosing forgetfulness on purpose. The Defense Council requested permission to launch full retaliation. Their message came fast, almost hungry. Authorize historical defense protocol. Enemy intends archive destruction. Lyra read the words twice. Historical defense. Clean words again. Her hands became cold. She could approve it. The law allowed her to release restricted human defensive records if the archive itself was threatened. Old systems, old strategies, brutal methods made to stop fleets before they reached civilian worlds. One command, and the archive could become a weapon again. Soren had warned her about this. Records could prevent war, but they could also teach people how to wage it better. Vorik's fleet moved closer. The council shouted for action. Lyra looked toward the Hall of Names. Nima Vale, Dorfall, Arndt, Elias, Vera, Soren. People first. Always people first. "Open a channel," she said. A clerk stared at her. "To the enemy fleet? To everyone." The clerk obeyed. Lyra stepped before the main screen. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. "Admiral Vorik, this is Senior Archivist Lyra." Vorik appeared again, eyes sharp with contempt. "Archivist, move your people away from the archive. We are not here for civilians." That is what many records say before civilians die. His jaw tightened. "You hide behind dead children." "No," Lyra said. "I stand in front of them." The hall held its breath. Vorik leaned closer. "You think names will stop ships?" "No," Lyra said, "but records might stop crews." She touched the console. The archive opened every file about the Far Rim's own history. Not secret crimes. Not accusations. Names. The first farmers of their border moons. Their lost miners. Their plague doctors. Their poets. Their children who died in cold stations before the Union ever noticed them. Vorik's face changed. Only slightly. Lyra spoke to his fleet, not to him. "You were told the archive holds only guilt. That is a lie. It holds you too. Across the attacking ships, private screens began receiving records. Letters from ancestors, old migration songs, rescue logs, forgotten names of workers who built the very shipyards, now sending war vessels forward. Some crews slowed. Vorik shouted orders. Several ships continued. Lyra opened another file. Doorfall, but not the attack. The soup joke. The human man smiling into the camera, hoping the first aliens liked soup. Lyra let it play across every channel. Then she said, "This is what was destroyed before the brutal war began. Not an enemy, not a legend. A room full of living people waiting to speak." Vorik cut the feed from his flagship, but he could not cut it from all ships. One destroyer stopped, then another. Then a carrier turned its guns away from the archive world. The Defense Council screamed into Lyra's private channel. "Authorized strike now. Enemy formation weakening." This is the moment. Lyra stared at the message. This is the moment. How many old wars had begun with those words? She replied with one sentence. No strike while communication remains possible. Vorik's flagship kept moving. It had enough firepower to scar the archive from orbit. Commander ships around him hesitated, but fear of authority held them in line. Lyra knew hesitation would not last, so she opened the final restricted file. The room gasped. It was a human war protocol, not a weapon design, a surrender protocol. Humanity had written it after the contact war, for any future enemy who truly wanted to stop before the last line. It began, how to lay down arms without losing dignity. Lyra broadcast it to Vorik's fleet. Step 1, power down forward weapons. Step 2, keep life support active. Step 3, transmit crew list. Step 4, preserve command logs. Step 5, allow witnesses. No humiliation, no forced kneeling, no public shame. A way back. That was what brutal wars rarely left behind. A way back before the final shot. Vorik understood what she had done. "You offer surrender before battle?" he snarled. "I offer record," Lyra said. "If you fire, history will record that too. If you stop, it will record that you stopped." His eyes burned. "You think mercy makes you strong?" "No," Lyra said. "Mercy makes the next record shorter." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one of Vorik's own captains transmitted crew lists. Another powered down weapons. Then 20. Then 90. Vorik's flagship remained armed, alone at the front of a fleet that was no longer fully his. His face on screen had become pale with rage. "You have poisoned them." "No," Lyra said quietly. "I reminded them they are people before they are weapons." The flagship's main cannon charged. The archive alarm screamed. Defense ships prepared to fire without permission. Lyra closed her eyes for one heartbeat. Then Vorik's cannon went dark. A new voice appeared on the channel. His first officer, Admiral Vorik, has been relieved under crew preservation law. "We are transmitting logs. We request witnesses." The Central Hall did not cheer. No one dared. Some victories were too close to tragedy for celebration. Lyra lowered her head. Request accepted. The Far Rim fleet was escorted into neutral space. No world burned. No archive was destroyed. No human weapon was used. For the first time, the galaxy survived a war before it became one. Weeks later, Lyra entered the oldest room again. The silver human plate waited. A new record had appeared beside it. Border Archive Crisis, resolved without battle. Under it, the archive had written a short summary. One fleet arrived to erase memory. Memory returned its name. Lyra touched the words. She thought of humanity's brutal war, of the galaxy trembling at their name for generations. She thought of how easy it would have been to use human records as weapons again. But perhaps the final lesson had never been that humanity could end wars. Perhaps the lesson was that truth could stop one from beginning. A young clerk entered the room. "Senior archivist," he said, "students are waiting in the Hall of Names." They asked what today's lesson is. Lyra looked at the silver plate, then at the new record. "Tell them today's lesson is simple." "What should I say?" She walked toward the door. "Say that the dead do not ask us to hate louder. They ask us to choose earlier." The clerk nodded, though he did not fully understand yet. He would. One day, outside, the archive door stood open. Above them, 3 promises were carved in stone. Lyra added a 4th that evening. A record is not complete when it tells how war ended. It is complete when it helps war never begin. And after that day, when humanity's name was spoken, the galaxy still trembled. But now, sometimes, the trembling came before the weapons, before the orders, before the lies. A small shaking in the hands of leaders when they signed dangerous papers. A pause in the voice of captains before they obeyed cruel commands. A question in the mind of a soldier before firing on a signal that only wanted to speak. That was enough. Not always, but sometimes. And sometimes was how peace first learned to breathe. Many years later, Lyra became old enough to understand why Vera had loved quiet rooms. Noise was easy. Silence made people honest. The archive had changed since the border archive crisis. Its doors stayed open day and night. Schools no longer brought students only once a year. Soldiers came before command exams. Diplomats came before treaty work. Even ship crews came before first contact missions. They did not come to worship humanity. They came to remember the cost of forgetting. In the oldest room, the silver human plate still stood between two old war records. Beside it now stood newer plates. The final witness. Doorfall. The border archive crisis. Each one told a different kind of war. One war fought with fleets. One war fought with memory. One war stopped before the first shot. Lyra walked slowly between them, one hand resting on her cane. Her young assistant, Tavin, followed beside her with a record slate. He was bright, careful, and too confident. That worried her. Confidence was useful in engineers, dangerous in historians. Senior archivist, Tavin said, "The new cadets are waiting." What are they asking? The same question as always. Lyra smiled faintly. Why does the galaxy still tremble when humanity's name is spoken? Yes, they entered the Hall of Names. Hundreds of cadets stood in neat rows. Their uniforms were clean. Their faces were serious. Some looked bored. Some looked afraid. Some looked like they only wanted the lesson to end. Lyra knew those faces. Every generation believed it was too modern to repeat old sins. She stood before them. Humanity, she began, was not the strongest war in the galaxy because humans won a brutal war. The cadets watched her. It was strongest because after the war, no one could hide from the record. She turned toward the wall where Nima Vale's small burned shoe rested behind glass. This was not strategy. This was not policy. This was not acceptable loss. This was a child. The room changed. Bored faces lowered. Lyra pointed next to Doorfall. These were not future soldiers. They were people waiting to say hello. Then she pointed toward the border archive crisis record. And this was a war that almost happened because someone wanted memory erased again. A cadet raised his hand. If humanity was so brutal, why do we honor their records? Lyra looked at him carefully. We do not honor brutality. We honor honesty after brutality. The answer made him quiet. Another cadet asked, "Could humans return?" "Yes," Lyra said. Fear moved through the room. She let it stay for a moment. Then she added, "But the better question is this. Would they need to?" No one answered. Lyra stepped closer to them. The name humanity is not only a threat from the past. It is a mirror. When leaders hide records, humanity's name should tremble in their hands. When soldiers are ordered to fire on civilians, humanity's name should stop their fingers. When archives are sealed for comfort, humanity's name should knock on the door. Her voice grew softer. If that happens, then they do not need to return. Years passed after that lesson. Tabin eventually became senior archivist. Lyra's name was added to the hall, not as a hero, but as a keeper. She had asked for no statue. The archive respected that. On the day Tavin took her place, he found one final note inside her desk. It was short. Do not let humanity become legend. Legends are easy to use. Keep them human. So he did. He changed the first lesson for every school. Students no longer began with battle maps. They began with the soup joke from Doorfall, then Nima's counting, then Elias Roan standing in pain, then Lyra refusing to fire. Only after that did they study fleets, weapons, treaties, and collapse. People first, always people first. And slowly, across centuries, the trembling changed again. It became law. No military order was valid unless recorded. No civilian loss could be hidden under soft language. No archive could be sealed without public review. No first contact mission could approach without witnesses. No leader could erase names and still call it peace. The galaxy did not become perfect. No civilization ever does. There were still lies, still ambition, still fear, still cruel people with clean voices. But now, the archive opened early. That was the difference. One night, far beyond mapped space, a human listening station received a small transmission from the Galactic Archive. It was not a warning. It was not a request. It was only the yearly public record, sent as tradition. At the end was one new line. No war this year was hidden from the record. For a long time, no answer came. Then one message returned. 5 words. Then peace is still learning. Tavin read it alone in the oldest room. He placed the message beside the silver human plate and smiled. The story had never really been about a galaxy fearing humanity. Fear was only the first lesson. The deeper lesson was harder. A brutal war had taught the stars that truth could be more dangerous than weapons, but also more merciful than victory. Because weapons ended enemies. Truth ended excuses. And so, whenever humanity's name was spoken, the galaxy still trembled. Not because humans were coming, not because fleets waited in the dark, but because every honest civilization should tremble a little before history. It should tremble before signing orders, before hiding names, before calling children numbers, before turning memory into ceremony. That trembling was not weakness. It was the last warning before cruelty became normal. And as long as the galaxy still trembled at humanity's name, the dead were not silent. The record was not asleep, and peace, imperfect but alive, still had a chance to breathe.